All right, I've got 10 a.m. Let's get started here in a moment. Welcome, everybody. A couple things. Looks like everybody's muted. That's great. A couple things I'm going to show you real quick before we start today. Things we need to talk about. First of all, tutoring information. I put up the tutor information in Blackboard. It's essentially a collaborate link. And again, I'm going to share that in a minute if you haven't logged into Blackboard, just how to do it. But essentially, it looks like what you do is when you click on the link, you would enter your email to set up an appointment because it is a virtual tutoring. So I had some students in my other class that were asking about a tutor. And I think there were some in this class as well. And I do have that information for you right now. So that's one thing. And again, I'll show you that in a moment. Next thing is the exam. Is going to be available next week. That's going to be next week's assignment essentially for you to do. And again, I'm going to show you the study guide in a minute, but again, the study guide is up. I put that in Blackboard in an announcement that I just also sent to your emails. So your student email should have that in there. And again, the way the exam is going to work, so I just thought like today, I'd first start with talking about the exam. We'll talk about the details, what you got to do. And then I also want to talk about next week's live virtual lecture sessions, just to make sure you know that they're review sessions only if you need it. And so you'll have the whole week to take the test. So having said that, and then of course today, after I talk about that, I'll show you a couple things after today. Then I can go back and see what your questions are. And I have another problem we can work just to practice again the T accounts and the debits and credits, and I'll try to throw in the accounting equation as we go through the transactions as well, because that's still going to be part of your exam. All right, so let me show you this real quick, and then after I show it to you, if you have any questions, let me know. But let me first go into Blackboard. All right, so again, when you go into Blackboard, I put up a couple new announcements. Right here, you can see again, here's the tutoring information. This is the link. It's a collaborate link in Blackboard that you click it. And when you open this up, again, it simply asks you to enter an email, and then you'll schedule like an appointment time. And they have all the hours. It's Monday through Thursday. Looks like it's 9 to 7. And then Friday, it's 9 to 4. Okay. And if any of you try it and you have any issues and you can't get in or something happens, please email me, let me know. I tried the link a couple times just to make sure it was valid, and it worked on my computer. Again, let me know if anybody tries it and they don't have success with it, then let me know. All right, so that's one announcement you see. And then here's the one I just, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead, question.
Yeah, I have a question. Now, since I'm on my way up to the school anyway, do they have it in person? The same thing? Can I go in person and do it?
I believe you can talk to the tutor about how they do that. My department chair gave it to me, but I was talking with the student Monday night, and they told me that they actually went, this is at the Merrimack campus, not the Forest Park campus. This is run through the Merrimack campus. And according to the student, they said that they were able to go get some live help on campus. And so I'll try to in fact, I'll make a note of that because I was told it was only virtual, but it does say, if you look at it, it just says lab tutor and available days and times. So it says virtual. So based on what was sent to me, it's just virtual, but I had a student tell me that he said he's able to actually go on campus, that this is at the Merrimack Accounting Lab, and he somehow got in and got some help. So I'll try to find out more information about that today. That part I did not know, but at least for right now, I can tell you 100% I know it's virtual. You at least have a virtual option right now, if that helps.
So I'll just, if I figure it out before you, since I'm heading up there, I'll just email you and let you know.
Yeah, no problem. That'd be good. All right. Does anybody else have any questions about just the tutor information? Okay. About the exam, again, let me talk, give me about 10 minutes. Let me give you some specifics on this test. And just because you need to know what needs to be happening. And remember that the Chapter 3 assignments, the Chapter 3 homework assignment and quiz assignment, they're due by Sunday. So this Sunday, upcoming Sunday, is September 27th. And so if you go back and review the class schedule, we're right on track. It'll say that exam 1 takes place between September 28th and October 4th. And so I know some of you have other classes, other LVL, other online classes, and they may do their testing in a different way. Here's how I'm doing my testing. So what you'll do is simply, just like when you go to take a quiz or submit the homework, you will log into Connect. You'll see that the exam is available beginning on Monday, September 28th. And then once you start to take that exam, you only have one attempt to do it. There's not a save later option, so set aside some time. I do give you 2 hours, that's 120 minutes to take this test. And you don't have to take it on Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday. You just have to take it between the dates of September 28th and October 4th, however it fits into your personal schedule. You could take it at midnight on Wednesday, however it works for you. But again, it isn't Connect. It is an online exam again, but you'll have a week to get that done. And before I put up the study guide, next week's class, since next week is the exam week, I intend to use next week's meetings on Monday and Wednesday. And I know they're only 50 minutes, but I'm just going to use those meeting times to answer questions and do any review that anybody needs some help with. So it's kind of like a personal tutoring session for the whole class next week if you need it. And that's on Monday, our normal meeting time. We'll show up and I can work problems, I can answer questions, however I need to assist you. And then if you don't need it, if you don't need any extra help, then next week you'll basically just be taking the test. That'll be your assignment next week. And then the following week we'll be getting into Chapter 4. That's when we'll start that. And we're pretty much on track according to the class schedule. So let me bring up the study guide. Yeah, question. Take, yeah.
Yes, this is Taylor. I have a question.
Yes.
So on the study guide, that stuff gonna have the income statements, the balance sheets and stuff that we have to input, right?
Correct.
Just so I can get a heads up on what I'm gonna do later.
I'm sorry, you were breaking up there.
Is there a way we could print out those?
Print out the financial statements? Oh, you mean like when you're working a problem?
Yeah, just so we could.
Oh, yeah, very good question. Not on the test. And the way the test works is you have to do the test. You have to submit everything in Connect. Now, that doesn't stop you from, I mean, you can have some scrap paper, and if it helps you to write it out, like on paper, you can do that. But yeah, just for the exams, I don't allow printing on any of the tests, you know, for obvious reasons. But I feel like you do get 120 minutes, 2 hours, and just addressing that. Let me just talk for a minute. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. But you'll note, against 3 chapters, you've got 40 multiple choice. They're worth 2 points each. That's 80 points of the exam. And then there's 2 problems. So Taylor, so one of the problems, you will have to, you know, prepare some, you know, those 3 financial statements. And the way you'll do it in the Connect package is you'll have to enter the amounts and click a drop-down arrow. And each of the 2 problems, there's going to be one problem where you'll be doing like the T accounts and the debit and credit, and then there'll be another problem where you'll be just doing the financial statements. And the system grades it automatically, but like I told my other class, there's still some gray area in the grading. So what I do anyway is I always go in and look at everybody's exam and look at their points that was recorded for those 2 problems that's on this test. And I will actually manually look at it and make some adjustments to your scores. If it looks like, if they gave you like, maybe, let's say you took a problem, you missed the financial statements, and let's say it gave you like a 6 out of 10. And I might go in there and look at it and say, oh, it looks like that's more like an 8 or a 9 out of 10. You got everything, but you just missed a couple things. I will do some judgment-based grading on that part. But on this test, majority of it is multiple choice. Notice 80%, it's a 100-point test, 40 questions, 2 points each. There's your 80. And then the 2 problems, I'll just tell everybody specifically, it's on the stuff we're really doing in chapter 3, which is comprehensive, which is the T accounts, the debits and credits. And then of course you have a problem on just preparing the income statement, the equity statement, and the balance sheet. Now the fact that, again, that this is an online test, everybody's got their notes. I mean, it's an open book, open note exam. And so I would prepare accordingly. I would maybe make up some notes, do some handwritten, typed up notes about what goes into each of these financial statements, and have that kind of like as a quick reference guide if it helps you when you're trying to answer the problem. Okay. And again, does that help, Taylor? I mean, I'm trying to make sure I answer that question, but you can't print. I don't let anybody print just on the exams.
No, it was on I was really talking about on the study guide, really. But I see how the study guide is, so
Okay.
never mind, I see it.
No, that's fine. So guys, on the study guide, the format, again, here's just the format of the test, the first part. And then the second part, I went in and just put, these are some things that, you know, this is after, by the way, after I'd written the exam, I went back and reviewed all my questions, and I tried to basically kind of give everybody a blueprint of what to kind of expect that you're going to have, based on the questions that I've entered into this exam. So for example, the stuff we talked about in chapter 1, we talked about a lot of basic accounting terms, a separate entity assumption, GAAP, I would go back and review some of that stuff in chapter 1, and that might be some questions people have for me next week. I don't know. We talked about the major legal forms of business entities, the proprietorship, partnership, corporation. Again, GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles. We talked about that. Know about the SEC, FASB, all that stuff I'm putting on there because the reason I put these things on there because you'll be tested on them. Accounting equation, that was chapter 2. But really, chapter 2 and chapter 3, and today, if there's any questions, I want to kind of go back and show you guys as I go through some of these problems with you, how the accounting equation is still in effect. But notice T accounts, the debit and credit rules, know about the trial balance, how to prepare a trial balance, and then there's those 3 basic financial statements. And so this, again, is in Blackboard, and I emailed it to everybody, your student emails. So you've got that. And today is, I guess, the 23rd. And so today's class, I intend to go back and answer questions and do another problem or 2 with you if it helps. But you quite literally don't have to take the test until, you could wait until October 4th to take it and take it on that Sunday if it helps. But the point is this week is today I'm going to wrap up chapter 3. Next week, I'm just using the 2 sessions just to review, answer questions. You guys can ask me anything you want if you need it. And then you can, in between, once you've taken the test, if you take the test on Monday, you don't really have to worry about coming to the session on Monday or Wednesday if you don't need it. So that's that.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah, question, yes.
About the 2 essay problems. Those 2 essay problems will be over the financial statements, which would consider the income statement, equity statement, and balance sheet, right?
Correct.
Okay.
One of the problems is, yes. You'll get 1 problem, and don't be nervous when I say essay. It's just the Connect system calls them worksheet problems, where you got to click some drop down arrows and so forth. But don't panic if it shows up and you don't think it looks good. Just make sure you submit each of them. And
Okay.
if anybody misses points on them and they still have the correct answer, sometimes you may not put it in the correct order that they want to see it. I'll make sure I review everybody's test anyway to make sure that they get the full credit they need. So don't panic if you take the test and your initial score comes back and you're disappointed in it. For those 2 problems, I will manually go in to look at them as well and also make some adjustments to your point totals if necessary.
So you saying if we miss a couple of things on those essay problems, you're not going to mark the whole problem wrong. You'll go in and adjust it and still give us credit.
Correct. Well, not necessarily. It depends on what you missed.
Okay.
If it was, sometimes the way they grade is if you don't have the right title.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have the title into the right cell. And I think that was an issue on the chapter 3 homework for some people, where they forgot to put the T account title cash or accounts receivable and the problem was saying it's mostly correct, but you're not completely finished with it. And they were confused about what they needed to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so if that comes up on the test where you got the correct debit and credit, and you just didn't do it in their correct format, and they may take a point or two off, I'll make sure that that doesn't hurt your grade.
Okay.
Now, on the multiple choice, those are pretty standard. So there is a correct answer for each question. So, you know, but usually it's the essay problems that I allow for a little bit of gray area in terms of I can go in and do some manual adjustments if I need to. And so again, so I just want to make sure everybody's clear about what's going to happen next week. If you log into to Blackboard and you go to the Connect assignments, you'll see that the exam one is already up. And one thing, it's just kind of off the record, just not trying to change the subject, but I want to show you guys one more thing in Blackboard. And it's not anything anybody's doing wrong, but let me go in, let me minimize that. Hold on just a second. All right. So when you guys submit any assignments, whether it's a homework assignment or a quiz assignment or the upcoming exam, some of you go into Connect, you log into Connect, you might click, for example, if I'm in Blackboard, I might go to this link and click this Connect account, and then I sign in, and then you go and submit the assignment, and that's fine, there's nothing wrong with that. The only thing, though, is if you do it that way, if you go to check your grades, if you go to Blackboard and you want to check your grades, if you don't go through my Connect assignment link in Blackboard, then the gradebook in Blackboard will not update automatically. That's what my textbook rep told me. So for example, when I say the Connect assignment link, that's this link that says Connect assignments. If I open that right now, you'll notice that you've got every assignment. In fact, here is exam one, but you have every assignment that you can reference. You can basically, if you click any of these links through this portal in Blackboard, it'll take you right into Connect to do them. If you follow this route, and then once you submit that assignment in Connect this way, the Blackboard gradebook updates automatically. If you do not, then I have to do it manually, which it's not a big deal for me. It's just that I want to make sure that some people, I've got some emails from, I've got 3 applied accounting classes this semester, and I've got some emails from my students wondering where their points were. And so then, of course, I still go in and I do it like once a week. I still go in and update your scores in Blackboard anyway. I make sure that everybody's got a score recorded if they submitted it. But some people didn't see their points in Blackboard right away, and they were nervous that they didn't get the points. And so I couldn't figure out why, because I paired up Blackboard with Connect, and I didn't understand why when you were in Connect and you submitted an assignment, why it didn't also then transfer to Blackboard automatically. To me, it should. And my textbook rep told me that the reason, because she went in and checked, for some people it shows up and for some people it didn't. And my rep told me that, well, the reason is because you have to go through this Connect assignment portal in Blackboard if you want the Blackboard gradebook to update simultaneously. Now, if you do it the other way, that's okay too, because what I do anyway, every week after a due date, let's say a due date's like this Sunday is coming up as a due date as well. I try to do my best not to forget, but I will go in and check. I'll first check the Connect gradebook, and then I'll look and see if those points transferred to Blackboard. And if they did not, then I just do a manual adjustment. I just manually input it for everybody.
Hello?
Yes.
So we're supposed to do the smart book videos, right?
No, those are optional. You don't have to do those. That's just out there just to give you some extra. It's really just the textbook, the e-text, and it reads to you and you can read through it, but those are just optional.
All right.
All right, so again, I don't want to change the subject from the exam score, but I just wanted to bring that to anybody's attention, just for future reference. If you want the Blackboard gradebook to update right after you've taken any of the assignments in Connect, you have to go through Connect assignments in Blackboard for that to happen. Otherwise, you just have to wait. You just have to wait for me to manually input it the following week. Just that's an FYI for everybody.
Excuse me.
Yes.
So for the SmartBook videos, just so we just look past the due date that it says on Connect. We don't have to do them at all.
Yeah, those are just optional.
Okay.
What happens is Connect has all these extra resources that I tried to make available for everybody. And they always make me put a point that they will not let me enter anything in there without creating an assignment. So I created it as an assignment just to give everybody that option to see it. All right, that's why I put that out there.
Okay, thank you.
All right, does anybody have any questions? It's just about how to submit assignments. If you've been doing it the other way and that's how you feel comfortable with it, I have no problem with that. I'm just saying if you want the Blackboard gradebook to update simultaneously, once you've submitted those Connect assignments, you have to go to Blackboard first and go to this Connect assignment link and then enter, enter the portal this way. Otherwise, it's just the time, you'll just have to wait. You'll still get the points. You have to wait for me to manually input it. All right. Does anybody have any other questions about next week, about the test, or even about the study guide that I just showed you?
Yes.
Mike, question?
Yeah, so aside from the study guide, do we have a practice test?
Nope.
Okay.
So the way I do it is you guys have been taking, well, of course, if you haven't taken the quiz yet, but Chapter 3 quiz, your exam questions are similar to your quizzes in terms of the multiple choice. And then the problems that I've been working with you, another problem I'm going to try to work with you today, it's very similar to how the test is formatted. Okay, anything else on just the exam? Anything about the exam format before we get back to wrapping up Chapter 3 today? Like we're good? Okay, now regarding Chapter 3, I went in, let me show you something. So I went in and I pulled up another problem. And again, this is just in the Connect database. And this is another problem that's similar to your textbook problems. I think it's similar to your homework problems. And it's a pretty long one, but this problem does all the different transactions that you're going to be having to do on the test. It's got the T accounts set up and so forth. And unless there's any questions, I'd like to go through again, at least see how much of this problem I can get through. This is not an actual assignment. This is just a problem I pulled up. But since, again, I'm recording this, I'd like to maybe work this problem out with everybody today, go through it with you. And then as I go through a few of these, I also want to bring up the accounting equation and add that to the mix. And I don't think I did that on our last session. So if like for example, on this first one, where it says Guttery invested $159,000 in cash to start the business. One of the things I was working with my Monday night class, I have a live virtual lecture on Monday, is I had some students who had questions about the accounting equation. And so, if I'm here in letter A, if I were to say, okay, here is I get this control thing on let me do something real quick. I'm going to take out my stylus and put it back in and see if that helps. All right. So what I did is I would write out the accounting equation like this. So here's your liabilities, assets equals liabilities plus equity. And for this one, I said, okay, if this was Chapter 2, we would say cash is an asset, because I had some students that were struggling again with the rules of debits and credits. So we went back as we were doing debits and credits, and we also said, first of all, you have to classify the account. So we know cash is an asset. And you say cash would be increasing. And then we also said that because this is an investment, we know that would go under capital. That's one of those equity transactions. And we also said capital is also increasing. And we say cash increase 159, that's 159,000. And because the equation has to balance, that means that capital in this case will also increase by 159,000. So we did that. And then once we did that, then we also tacked on the debits and credits rules. So for example, we said, okay, so if cash is increasing, How would the debit and credit rule apply to that? Well, because it's an asset, you would say assets increase with debits. So you'd say debit cash. And then of course we'd say capital is increasing. And of course you'd increase capital with a credit. And then there's your debits and credits. So therefore your debits equal your credits. Okay. So that's kind of like the format I did like this with my Monday night class. So I thought I would do that with you guys today if that helped. But does that help anybody? Does anybody have any questions on what I just showed you in terms of just trying to go back and pick apart not just the equation, but also then apply the debit and credit rule? Does anybody like that? Does anybody not like that?
I'm a little confused about that.
Okay, Veronica.
Is there like a simpler kind of like rule that works for like in a different way to say it?
For part A?
Yeah.
Simpler meaning, let me go back and let me start this over.
Like
So if we were looking at this, get my arrow on now. So these are all business transactions.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, if it's just chapter 3, you have to identify, of course, the accounts that are affected. And we know cash because they say cash. And of course, just by the wording, we should know that that's going to be an investment type of transaction.
Oh, okay.
So that would be your starting point. And then the next question comes, so what do you do to cash? Are you going to debit cash or credit cash? And because cash is increasing, and again, and let me write this one up real quick. So this kind of goes back to just a little bit of review. The debit and credit rule for assets, if I write out my T account, I mean, you got debit and credit. The debit rule for assets is plus minus. So any account that's classified as an asset will always be increased with debits and decreased with credits. And so in this case, because we got cash and cash is an asset, we're going to be saying cash debit 159 because it's increasing. And then remember, because you have to have a debit equal credit, there has to be a credit to offset that. The offset will go to capital. And of course, we would be crediting capital for 159. And so other than the fact that you have to classify these according to what account, where they belong. Is it an asset? Is it a liability or equity or so forth? And then once you put it into that category, then you follow those debit and credit rules that I introduced, of course, in chapter 3. Does that help? Is that a little bit better, Veronica, or not better?
Yeah, that is. Thank you.
All right.
Is it gonna ever come a time when it'll just be one, like I'm just saying, using A as an example.
Okay.
Is it just gonna be a time that we just use one debit or one credit and
No.
not both?
No, you got.
Okay.
Yeah, that's very good. Very good question. Yeah, you always have to have this. That's basically like the equation. The equation has to balance, just like you have to have debits equal credits. You can't just debit an asset and not have a credit to offset that. Okay. So going forward on this, so like in this problem, so if we go down, notice we got our T accounts. I would just click this as transaction A. We'd say 159, there's your debit to cash. And then I'm going to find capital. Again, this is transaction A. And then there's my credit to capital. So if this was like an exam problem and you had a problem where they started off by saying that the owner invested cash in the business, you would basically go into the T account and the exam would have all this set up and you'd enter 159 as a debit to cash and you'd find 159 as a credit to capital. Now, if you fail to enter these letters in which they may want you to do, that part, you shouldn't get any points taken off. And if they do take points off or something like that, then I'll make sure that I add those points back. But I'm looking to see if you got the right debit and the right credit. And also, they may make you enter the account titles. I believe they give you to them. I'll go back and check. But if they don't give you cash as a title, you just enter a cash T account. But I do believe they give you all these titles, and you just have to write put the right debit and credit in there. All right, let's look at part B. Again, I'm just going to go through a few of these, and then You guys let me know if there's something you want me to show in a different format, just let me know. So on part B, it says paid $5,900 for the current month's rent. So when you see paid, everybody should be thinking cash.
Accounts payable.
Okay, cash, hold on, yeah. It's cash, but it's not accounts payable. If it was accounts payable, they would say you're paying your credit clients, or you're paying something from a past due bill, and we'll have one of those in this problem. But this one won't be accounts
Is
payable.
it expense?
Do what?
Is it expense?
Yes, it's going to be rent expense.
Do we have to classify which expense it is for
Yes.
these types? Okay.
You do, because in this one, you'll notice like they have listed for you, if you can see this, they've got rent expense, utilities expense, telephone, salaries, and they have a miscellaneous expense. So just like the exam, they will want you to put it in that specific expense account, okay? So in this one, if we were to say cash, and I'll just use this, and then does it help anybody? Does anybody like me to write out at least part of the equation as I analyze it with you? Does that help anybody?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and and I'm not trying to confuse anybody, but I'll do that part first, because I think this also is kind of like recapping, reviewing chapter 2 as well. But the basic idea every time you go through these is, again, let me get my stylus back on, is here's your essential equation. And I'll start with my classifying cash. Cash is an asset. So we've got cash. And the reason I know it's cash is because they simply say pay. Well, you're paying with money. This is cash. The offset is going to go to your expense. And expense is part of equity. That's an equity item. That's one of those, remember, there's 4 equity transactions. Expenses is one of them. You got revenues, expenses, investments, and withdrawals. And if you've forgotten that, just go back and review the debit and credit rules that I've given you. And I've given you 4 specific rules for just the equity side. But in this case, we should I'm sorry, Tiffany, question.
Yes, I was gonna say that expenses, I thought that was a liability.
No, it's not, yeah. The only liability that you're gonna see in here is gonna be accounts payable.
Accounts payable. Okay, I got you.
And we're gonna have that when we get to letter G and on letter K. And you're gonna see how that's
So the expenses will go in equity.
Correct.
Okay.
So the way this will work was, once you analyze these, you put them in the classifications. Cash, because we're paying cash, everybody should say cash is decreasing. I'll put a minus there. You say decrease. I'll write out decrease if that helps. You're decreasing your cash. And if you look at the T account for an asset, how do you decrease assets? You decrease assets with a credit. That's the rule. And then if you follow along where you have debits have to equal your credits, if I'm crediting cash, what do I have to do to the expenses? Well, you're going to have to debit your expenses, because we know that the debits have to equal the credits. But at the same time, your expenses will be reducing equity. So in this case, debiting, of course, the rent expense and crediting cash. Okay. So if you went down again to the T accounts, again, this is 5,900. Let's clear that. So I'd go to cash, I put a credit, and then I'll just enter transaction B, and then I'll look up rent expense. I'll put the debit there, and then again, I'll put transaction B. Okay. All right. Are there questions? Any questions on part B and what I just showed you? Okay. Part C. We've got bought office furniture for $16,620 in cash. So everybody think about this. So we've got cash, and everybody knows right now that cash is, if you had to classify it under the accounting equation, everybody knows that cash is an asset, right? What about office furniture? Where would that go? Would you say
Assets.
Assets. That's asset.
Assets.
Yeah. Asset. And that's the thing. You got to classify these. Once you get them properly classified, and you're correct, it is an asset, then you just have to plug it in there and then then ask yourself what's increasing and what's decreasing, and then just add in the debit and credit rule. And so in this problem, it looks like all we have is just assets. So if you look at your equation, we've got cash and we've got furniture. We've got two assets going on here. One asset's increasing and one asset is decreasing. So somebody tell me which asset would be increasing?
Office furniture.
Is it the furniture?
Yeah.
I'm just going to put a plus next to furniture. That means increase. So if furniture is increasing, what's happening to cash?
Cash decreasing.
Very good. You got it. And so if you can get that down, then just go to the debit and credit rule. These are both assets. How do you increase an asset? Well, with the debit. And how do you decrease an asset? With the credit. And that should be your strategy for each one of these if you're struggling with how to interpret any of this. To me, that would be your first start, is to go back and maybe write out the equation and then try to classify what accounts are being affected, and then say, all right, what's increasing, what's decreasing. And as long as you have those accounts classified accordingly and appropriately, then just follow the debit and credit rule. So in this one, this is for what, 16,620? I'd go to cash, I'll put the credit in there, and go, this is what, transaction C. And then I'm looking for office furniture, it's right there. There's my debit. And then I'll enter transaction C right there. So that's essentially what you'll have. I mean, you have to do this in your homework anyway, but that's essentially what you'll be doing on the exam too, on one of those problems. Okay. Questions on part C, anybody? Okay. Part D says perform services for 8,100 cash. And by the way, just about every one of these transactions involves cash, by the way, just so you know, not all of them, but just about every one of these, the majority, over 90% of these transactions involve cash. So at this point in time, we all know cash is an asset. So we have one account affected, but then the other question comes, what is this perform services? Now we've seen that before.
Revenue.
That should be.
Revenue.
Revenue. That's revenue. Now, here's the other problem with that some people have right now. It's that it'd be nice if they just had you use an account called service revenue. I think that would be perfect, but they don't. They use an account called fees income. So if you see that account being used on the test, that's going to be the revenue account. That's the only revenue account that you have to worry about at this point in time. There'll be other revenue accounts later on. But for right now, fees income, take a note of that, fees income is going to be our revenue account. And so if I went back and said, okay, we've got revenue and we've got cash. So if I then said, okay, fine. If I looked at this from my equation standpoint, we know we've got cash, and then I'm just going to write revenue, even though it's fees income. I'll just write revenue. We know that's part of equity. So then once you get to this step, you just have to ask yourself, what's increasing? Are they both increasing? Are they both decreasing? And so forth. And then once you get that down, then just tack on the debit and credit rule. So if I start with cash, and it says perform services for cash, everybody says cash should be doing what? Should it be increasing or should it be decreasing?
Increasing.
Does anybody have any questions? That's correct. Does anybody have any questions about why that's increasing? Okay. And then what about revenue? Is revenue increasing or decreasing?
Increasing.
Increasing. They're both increasing. So how do you increase an asset? The rule is debit. How do you increase revenue?
Credit.
With a credit. And so there you go. You got a debit, and this one will be for 8,100 for cash, and you're going to have a credit of 8,100 for your fees income revenue. And then once you know that, then you just have to enter it into the T account. So if I go down to cash, I'll go ahead and put that debit of 8,100. Again, this is, I guess, transaction D. And then I'll go down to fees income, enter the credit. There's my credit, and then put transaction D. Okay. All right, questions on that one? Okay, so performed services, we just identified as revenue. This one is cash revenue. And I'm just gonna jump around. Look at letter F. You see the same thing, says performed services, but that one says on credit. And then if I skip down and go to letters M and N, those also say performed services. One says cash and one says credit. So the reason I'm showing this is that once you get this down, you'll see this repeat over and over again. There's a lot of repetition. So once you get it down, yeah, it's like, have you seen this before? Yeah, but that's how it works in accounting. You often have recurring types of transactions. So letter D happens to be a cash revenue. When we get to letter F in a moment, we'll show you how that becomes, it's what they call a credit revenue. And we'll show you how that works, again, if you have any problems with that. All right, so let's do letter E. Letter E says paid $12.40 for the telephone bill. So again, paid, everybody should be thinking what asset account is involved there when you're paying something.
Cash.
It's cash. We know cash is involved. And then they say telephone bill. That's going to be what?
Expense.
Very good. That's going to be an expense. And so in the equation, sorry, question. Was there a question? All right. Like I said, just stop me if I go too fast or if you want me to repeat anything. This is for anybody, but you got assets, liabilities plus equity. We've got cash. And of course, cash should be decreased, right? And then of course, we've got our expenses. And of course, with our expenses, I'm going to put a plus there now because with our expenses, we're actually increasing our expenses because every time you incur an expense, your expenses go up. But if we go to the rule for the asset, cash is going down. Everybody says, how do you reduce an asset with a debit or a credit? You'd all say, well, please say credit. Now, if I credit cash, and we know the rule says debits have to equal credits, then by default, anyway, we have to debit an expense. We have to. Okay. And then that'll be for $12.40. So if I go to cash, I'll put the credit in of $12.40. And then I think somebody asked earlier, I'm looking for, in this case, it looks like it's telephone. So I'm looking for telephone expense. I would debit that $12.40. And that's all you do. Okay. Now let me do one more, and then there's another thing I want to make sure you guys know about. So that's letter, what, E? So here's letter F. And on letter F, it says, again, here's your performed services, but this one says on credit. So if I went to my equation, we all know revenue, right? I'll just write revenue. We know it's revenue is one of them. Can somebody tell me what that credit would be? What's the credit account we would use for that?
Account payable.
Account.
Okay. It's not accounts payable.
Account receivable.
Receivable.
This one's going to be accounts receivable. Now, if some people thought it was accounts payable is only for the liabilities. This is accounts receivable. This is an asset. And to try to help you guys, revenue generates assets. Anytime you have a revenue, you're always going to have an asset to offset that, whether it's cash or credit. So in this case, it's not cash revenue like it was in transaction C, but this one's going to be what they call credit revenue. And so we'd put that into accounts receivable. And in this case, we'd say accounts receivable is going to be increasing, just like cash increased in transaction C. And of course, we know revenue is also increasing. So it works the debit and credit works the same. We're going to be debiting accounts receivable and crediting revenue, just like we did in transaction C, except we're using this account. We're using accounts receivable. So if I go down to my T account, I'm looking for, this is for, looks like it's 13,900. I would debit accounts receivable and then credit fees income. Okay.
Will everything you put in the boxes be positive?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Now, and that's a good point because let's say that on the test, that you went to cash, and let's say you tried to put a minus 1240. Okay, so if I do 1240 there, but notice I put a positive. If I put a minus 1240, you'll notice that your balance changes. So that could be one of those little hiccups on the exam where if you did this, it's going to affect your balance. And that's one of those where I would still go in and give you full credit for it. That the system would mark you as incorrect. But I would go in and say, nope, you had it on the credit side. Your thinking is correct because you're thinking negative. You're thinking it's reducing cash. You just, you know, I will make sure you don't lose points if you do something like that. It's just that initially your balance will be wrong because there's a formula and you're already calculating the balance for each of these accounts. Okay. So again, but for everything, just put in a positive 1240. Okay. Now, that is what transaction F, right? Let's do one more. Let's look. I'm trying to get to at least letter H, and then I want to show you.
I was just calling in.
Stephanie, question?
Even though she got off on the side, so she can come in.
The ramp.
Yeah.
Okay. Does she have a wheelchair already?
She got a, no, she just got her walker.
All right. All right. Questions on anything so far? All right. Look at letter G. Purchased a computer and copier, $37,800. Paid $12,900 in cash. The balance due in 30 days. So hopefully you're thinking computer and copier is an asset. Cash is an asset. This is paid. We have two assets. And then we've got something else going on here. So if you were confused about how to work this one out, trying to figure out what accounts to use, if you went back and started with your equation, say, okay, we got assets equals liabilities plus equity. We know we've got cash, and it looks like we've got some sort of equipment, office equipment, two assets. And both of these, so when it says purchase computer and copier, we should know that that's going to be increasing. That's an asset. When it says paid, we know that cash is decreasing. But then remember, they're only paying $12,900 in cash. The rest of it is due in 30 days. So for equipment, it's going to be increased $37,800. For cash, it's going to be decreased by $12,900. And then can somebody tell me where the balance is going to go? Does anybody know? And I had to mute everybody because there was some noise in the background, but you can always unmute yourself. Does anybody know when it says balance due in 30 days, what does that mean?
Accounts payable.
Very good. That's accounts payable. And can somebody tell me the amount? What amount would I be putting into accounts payable?
Difference of 37,800.
So if you just pay,
12,900.
how much?
12,900.
Right, 12,900. Yeah. So if you just take 37,800.
You said how much?
24.
I'm sorry. It should be 24,900.
24,100.
Yeah. It should be 24,900 because remember, if I have an increase of 37,800 and a decrease of 12,900, that difference is 24,900. And so to make this equation equal, I have to put that into the other side of the equation. Otherwise, the equation wouldn't balance. So in this case, you would be debiting equipment, you'd be crediting cash, and you'd be crediting accounts payable. Because in this case, you're increasing your accounts payable. So at that point, if I went to the assets, I have cash. I'd put the 12,900 as a credit. And in this one, they want you to use office equipment. I put 37,800 as a debit. And then accounts payable, I put the 24,900 as a credit. Okay. So that's how you do this. This is one of those problems where you've got three accounts affected. Okay. But I don't know if it helps if you get stuck about knowing what to increase or what to debit or credit. I think it might help if you get a problem like this to maybe write out the equation, identify the accounts, ask yourself what's increasing, what's decreasing, and then tack on the debit and credit rule. Okay. All right. Other questions up to this point? I mean, again, I'm just reviewing with you right now, even at this point, but you got to do a problem like this, very similar a problem like this in your chapter 3 homework as well. Okay. I know
Why is the remaining balance?
Question.
Yeah, why is the remaining balance like positive? Like,
okay. So if I just look at just the assets, equipment went up. You had a positive 37.8 on equipment. You had a minus 12,900 on cash, right? If I net those together, my total assets right now are going up by 24,900. And that's just on the asset side. The right side of the equation has to offset that somehow. And the offset in this case will go to our accounts payable because the equation, again, has to balance. That's why.
oh, okay.
Does that help a little bit?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. I know I'm getting low on time. I know it's 10:51, but this is the kind of stuff I can do with the class next week, Monday and Wednesday, before you take the test. You don't have to take the test on Monday. I mean, if you want to come back, I mean, next week's sessions is simply to go back and I can review the equation and the debits and credit rules and anything else you guys want me to review. That's next week's classes. And if for some of you, if you don't need any extra help and you want to take that test Monday, that's fine as well. But if you do, then you just don't need to come to the review sessions that I'll do with the class next week on Monday and Wednesday. And you guys can ask me anything you want to ask me about the study guide, any of the problems, any of the concepts, whether it's chapter 2 or chapter 3, just let me know. So I would almost, the way I would approach this is, well, first of all is, you know, make sure that you get your chapter 3 assignments submitted by Sunday, because those are due by Sunday. And then in addition to that, you know, try to go back and think about if you're struggling, you have some questions or some weaknesses, those are some good questions you can think of to ask me. And then that'll help me, you know, put up some problems and hopefully we can help fix those if there's any issues. Okay. All right, I can hang on here for a few more minutes. I know some people need to leave, but questions as I wrap this up for today about next week, anything?
So for this first exam, does this go over the first accounting equations that we did as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Veronica, very good. It's a good question. There's actually a problem on the exam, I believe, or actually I think it's in the multiple choice, but yeah, you'll have to apply just the accounting equation. So like you might get a problem where it'll give you like a transaction and then it'll say the following accounts were what, increased or decreased, and you'd have to know it's an increase to an asset account and an increase to a liability account. So yeah, you'll get some questions that are specifically related just to the accounting equation, you bet.
Okay.
And that's some of the stuff I can help the class next week too. If anybody has any questions or they want me to go back over anything, I can pull up any homework problem you looked at next week for anybody, and I can work it out and go answer it for the class as well. Okay. All right. Anything else from anybody? Questions?
How do I access the study guide?
Oh, it's in Blackboard. Hold on. If you actually, it should be in your student email too. But let me just show you. If you go into Blackboard and it's under the announcement link, if you go into announcements in Blackboard, I sent out an announcement and it's in a Word document. It just says Exam 1 Study Guide, section 401. Okay. Let me know if you can't get it open.
All right.
Cool. Anything else from anybody? Anything? All right. Like I said, so I think I said what I needed to say. If anybody has anything that comes up between now and next week, just email me. I look forward to seeing anybody next week in class. If next week is just review, anything from chapters 1, 2, or 3, anything you want me to go over to re-explain. My goal would be to pick a couple problems that would, you know, pinpoint any issue, whether it's an accounting equation type of deal or even the debit and credit. Okay. All right. If there is nothing else, I'm looking to see if anybody has any hands raised or any questions. I don't see anything. All right, if we're good, again, just make sure you get, get your chapter 3 stuff assignments submitted by Sunday. And then 2 possible review sessions for everybody next week if you need it. But remember, the exam is next week. All right, cool. Oh, one more thing. I got a couple of people left on here. Nobody brought this up, but I'll just mention it to you, and I'll mention it next week as well. Let's say you're in the middle of the exam, and your internet goes down or something happens. Don't panic. I can always go back in there and reset it for you. So if something happens and you get nervous, saying, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to fail the course now because I can't finish the test," don't worry. I will look at that. I've never had a problem with that. I can easily go back and reset the test for you if that happens. You just have to let me know. Okay, guys?
That just happened with my first test in another class.
Is that how they did it? Did they reset it for you?
Yeah, they just reset it for me, and
Okay, yeah.
I just got to redo it.
Yeah, just so nobody, just don't panic. And remember,
I
know I would be panicking as a student myself, because I know some of you you want this class, whether it's for accounting or for funeral services or for another major, that's fine. But I don't want you to feel like all hope is lost. Technology issues happen. I know I've had some issues with Zoom. I've had some other issues where my computer wasn't working right or something. The internet connection was bad. I had to reboot everything. But if anybody has an issue on the exam where something gets locked up, just email me and just be patient. Don't scream, and I'll be glad. I will work with you. All right. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, guys. I'm gonna wrap this up. If there's nothing else, have a good day. And again, just email me if you have any questions in the meantime. All right. See you guys later.